So I finally had a chance to catch up with episode number 5 in season 3 of Brockmire. I'm Matt Levine. Welcome to my YouTube station. Thank you for joining me. Please go ahead if you haven't done so and subscribe. Check out 954sports.com. Wanted to explain this week's episode because it's an episode within an episode within an episode. So explain it kind of one by one briefly for all the different scenarios going on. Lots going on is what I'm trying to say. So I'll hit on everything quickly, what I'm also trying to say. Okay, the name of this episode, Clubhouse Chemistry. Oftentimes I forget the name of the episode. I mean, how many times do you remember the name of each episode? But if you're keeping score at home, I figured I'd throw that in there. Well, first off, last week in season 4, they set up one of these storylines going into this week, and that was the return of Charles. Perhaps my most beloved character in the Brockmire series. Charles, reintroduced last week as Jim was in a moment of need about to jump off the wagon. The scene has him calling someone for help, you don't know, as he's about to break down in front of a liquor store standing outside. And Charles shows up at his front door, says, I flew in at a moment's notice. So, as I said last week, it was a relief to see Charles back into the fold. Bright, young actor, very talented. I've talked about it many times. And his name is Tyrell Jackson Williams. He's on the up and up for good reason. So he comes back in this episode, brings his presence, supporting Jim the best he can. He's now a millennial millionaire through his entrepreneurial mogul efforts as a multimedia expert and business owner. Also a surprise from the earlier seasons, Denise, a hookup in young Charles's life back in Morristown. She surprises Jim, comes to Orlando, or I should say Central Florida. I'm not sure if it's Orlando, for a visit. And that's another storyline of what a psycho this chick is. Some great scenes in this episode, including knives flying and Jim at the end of it getting stabbed. Unbelievable. And one of the stories within the story is that young Charles is blinded by love and the craziness of this girl and the mud she's about to drag him through. Jim, who's now sober, tries to reason with him and not try to be over-opinionated, overbearing, as he is learning to have a filter and learning to slow down and be mature and try to point out faults in people's lives when they ask him. So that's another story, is Charles with this girl and the whole visit. Meanwhile, Jim and Matt the Bat Hardesty, played by another terrific actor. I keep harping on how well this show is staffed with just acting talent and actresses and actors that are A-listers, or, you know, just at the, maybe not A-listers, well, this guy is, at the top of their craft. And J.K. Simmons, who plays Matt the Bat Hardesty, his health is failing. He's in his darkest hour. A guy who has been around by the celebrity of baseball and being, you know, a meathead, star athlete, a jock. He admits as much to Jim, has an emotional breakdown when Jim visits him by default at the hospital. Jim has another visit with him. Jim has the emotional breakdown. And the show along with this is that these two guys who were nemesises, you know, they had shared one thing in common, that they did not like each other, have now come to an agreement as sort of BFFs. And again, Matt the Bat's final hours as he's passing and vanishing from cancer. And they let each other in their lives. And the honesty of telling it like it is what they're able to respect each other for. And also another story is this nurse Jim takes a romantic interest in, at least that's how it's being set up. Sort of a matchmaker on the DL by Matt the Bat. It's the nurse who's taking care of him in the hospital. He sends her over to the ballpark to kind of take a tour and get a day in the life and be a guest in the broadcast booth and in the stadium of what goes on in baseball. Matt the Bat does it to hook Jim up, I think, with a nice, genuine lady. And so I'm seeing that. So you got that storyline. Lots of great humor in this one. I always mention there's a couple lines relaying to you. Love the line in the scene when Charles is in Jim's house on the visit. They just go to the ballpark. By the way, Charles has a chance to meet Gabby Taylor. I like the interaction between the two. Jim's oldest and truest best friend, and a new friend who's becoming a true ally of Jim's and becoming a true friend. They get to meet, but they go back after the ballpark to Jim's apartment before Denise, the cuckoo chick, or as they used to say in Misery, right? What a great movie with Kathy Bates. The wackadoodle surprises them. Jim asked Charles, what do you want to do that evening? He replies with going some crazy mosh or rave or something like that. But Jim says, everything your generation does terrifies me. Everything. And the retort by Charles is, well, your generation killed the planet in America. Jim says, touche. Do I agree with the touche part? But I love being able to see the old schoolers side of it like Jim, and then being able to see the other side of the glass half empty, half full with the millennials' point of view. So I dug that. Really cool interaction there. Just a great episode overall. I really enjoyed it. I thought all the interaction between the cast members, again, were great. Gabby in one scene, when this young lady that Matt the Bat sends over, the nurse, to the ballpark, she walks in the broadcast booth. Gabby is literally bent over the table. Jim's holding a needle. And you're like, what the heck is going to go on? And as the scene develops, you see Jim shoot her in the backside with the needle, and winds up being a fertility drug. And there's another great line, as Jim says, he's explaining as he shoots her with the needle that he lost his sister because of his honesty. And maintaining friendships have always been a challenge. And he says he's great with needles, bad with people. So that relationship with Gabby and Jim is developing nicely. And another little scene I like is when Jim is talking to the nurse. And anytime he gets out of line, Jim now wears a rubber band. You've seen that before. People pinch themselves. Gabby's pinching the rubber band so he can be a gentleman talking to this young lady as they're finding an interest in one another. And then Jim starts doing the rubber band. So you're seeing a mature Jim Brockmire in this episode 5. And one last thought, the last scene, okay? A couple last thoughts. The last scene, Jim is saying goodbye to Charles. He's going to go to New York. The girl went ahead. They're going to get hitched. Jim gets 30 seconds because at first Matt the Bat gave him some advice. Matt the Bat in the scene before was with Jim walking in the hospital, and Jim's telling him about Charles and the girl, and Matt the Bat says, hey, I'll give you some advice. Give me your opinion if you ask for it, and only give it once. So at the end scene, Jim heeds the advice, and Charles looks at him and says, hey, I'm leaving, but something's wrong. You're too unopinionated. You got 30 seconds. Jim goes into a soliloquy and a diatribe. Brockmire in, I should say, on the Hall of Fame level. Best part of the show. Charles doesn't heed his advice, gets in the car, and that's it. And for the first time you see in this show, Jim is more the adult in this situation than Charles. And as he told Matt the Bat in the scene before I just mentioned, Charles like a son to him. So you see the shifting there. And Jim becoming a responsible adult. Again, learning a filter, making the right decisions. But they do a great job with this show, week in and week out, of having you come back and reeling you in. And throughout this season, you know, I started as not liking the sober Jim. Now I'm liking the sober Jim and hoping he doesn't fall off the wagon, but you're waiting for him to maybe fall off the wagon or that to happen. Final thought. This show also educates you. It always has me Googling something after. And for the first time in my Brockmire experience, I thought about, where are the baseball stadiums this was filmed? In season 1, it looked like just a great stadium. So they filmed it in season 1 at this stadium called Luther Williams Stadium. It's in central Georgia in Macon. Looks like a really, really neat stadium, doesn't it? Part of season 2 was filmed there as well, and it was also filmed part of season 2 at this stadium. This is called Cool Race Stadium in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Looks like a cool stadium. And season 3, which is supposed to be the Oakland baseball team's spring training complex in Central Florida, is filmed at a stadium I've been to, which was formerly the Atlanta Braves Stadium, Turner Field. I was there about 2000, 2001. I thought it was great. It now belongs to and owned and operated by Georgia State University. So it's Georgia State Stadium, primarily used for football. So again, Brockmire sent me to Google. I'm going to send you into next week with this final note. Thumbs up for episode 5, season 3. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're looking forward to season 6. I'm certainly looking forward to reviewing it for you guys next week. Thank you so much.